Welcome in, everyone. Welcome in. How do my audio levels sound? I'm gonna turn down Spotify a little bit so it doesn't overpower me. Welcome in, Lapin. Audio levels are good. That's good. I have a little bit of a different setup today so that y'all are able, my facial tracker is able to see my face a little better. Because normally it just makes this, it's flat like this, or it'll do that. So today is a little bit different of a setup with my mic placement. Just want to make sure that all my levels are looking good. So yeah, the title explains it all for today. Today I'm going to be reading some bedtime stories, and I believe that they are designed for both children and adults. But even if they're for kids, it'll still be soothing to listen to me read them. Now, I guess without further ado, let's get started, shall we? Let's talk about Jasper the Thoughtful Lion. Jasper the lion could hear their laughter even from a distance. Susan the zebra and Richard the meerkat playfully raced through the dry grass, kicking up dust and sand. When they were completely out of breath, they ran over to the shady spot where Jasper was sitting. "Hey, Jasper, come play with us," said Susan. "Welcome in, Sen." "What's the matter, Jasper?" Richard asked, noticing Jasper's mood. "What were you thinking about?" Jasper didn't know what he had just been thinking about. "Just keep playing without me," he mumbled. Susan and Richard looked at each other. "But Jasper, you're going to miss the whole day if you keep this up," said Susan. "Can we help? Maybe the three of us could think about it together." But Jasper didn't want to accept their help. "Friends always stick together," said Richard. "And if you don't tell us what's on your mind, we'll tickle you until you do." Susan and Richard giggled at the idea of tickling Jasper's tummy. "All right, I'll tell you," said Jasper before they could tickle him. "There was an accident yesterday when I was visiting my grandmother. I was playing chase with my little cousin, and I was about to finally catch him when I tripped over a tree root and fell into the table. I heard a terrible crash. When I turned around, I saw Grandma's favorite teapot lying on the ground in pieces." "Is she very mad?" asked Susan, who sympathized with Jasper. "No, she wasn't mad at all," she said. "She told me not to worry about it, but I know how much she loved that teapot. Jasper looked even sadder now. Enough sulking, said Richard. Why don't we help you to glue the pieces together? Your grandma won't even notice any difference from before. Jasper took out a bag with the pieces of the broken teapot. Richard got glue and a brush, and in no time, the three of them had glued the teapot back together. Well, it doesn't look like new, but I'm sure your grandma will be very happy anyway, said Susan. Let's go see what she says, said Jasper. The three of them set off. They were greeted by Jasper's grandma at the garden gate. Hello, you three, she said. Do you want to have a piece of cake with me? I still have a few left over from yesterday. I can offer you juice and water to go with it. I'd love some tea, said Jasper, and I have the perfect teapot, too. Jasper beamed as he handed his grandma the repaired teapot. You three are the best, said Grandma. This teapot is very old. It belonged to my grandmother. Thank you so much for fixing it. Now let's eat cake. Jasper smiled and felt all his worries melt away. That's a nice story about, I guess, anxiety and letting people in, letting people help. Let's see here, what else do we have? Let's do... That was good, yeah. Let's do a random. Okay, this one's a little bit longer, approximately 10 minutes. This is Princess Jessie and the Unicorn. In a small kingdom surrounded by a dense forest, a king lived with his only daughter in a beautiful castle. Her full name was Jessica Madison Abigail Elizabeth, Princess of the Woodland, but most people just called her Jessie. Since Jessie was the king's only daughter, and because he loved her more than anything in the world, he fulfilled her every wish. He was a good-natured king, and he wanted to be beloved, but he wanted his beloved child to grow up as happy as possible. Unfortunately, the exact opposite happened. Princess Jessie became conceited and spoiled. She wasn't happy unless she had everyone's full attention. If her wishes were not immediately fulfilled, her mood instantly worsened. She was rude to all of the servants, rarely even spoke to them in complete sentences. She was unreasonable too, which, like when she demanded ice cream with fresh strawberries in the dead of winter, when there was no fresh strawberries to be found. Jessie was actually a sweet girl, but because she had always gotten everything she wanted, she had learned to expect the impossible and didn't respect people's work. One day she demanded a pink dress embroidered with yellow diamonds, and the very next day she found the color yellow unsatisfying and demanded they all be replaced with red gemstones. Eventually, Princess Jessie became just plain bored. No one ever denied her a single wish. Jessie could think of nothing more to do with her time because the more things she wished for, the less fun it was to do anything with them. When the king noticed that his daughter was becoming unhappy and spiritless, he ordered a golden carriage to drive her every day through the beautiful forest. He hoped this would excite her and keep her cheeks rosy from the fresh air, as befitted a princess. One day, Jessie was particularly grumpy. Nothing pleased her. The food didn't taste good. Her beautiful pink dress suddenly scratched her neck, and even the golden carriage was not comfortable enough for the bumpy road through the forest. She looked out of the carriage's gold-framed window, dissatisfied and indifferent. Suddenly, something flashed past her window. It was a white creature that left a beautiful, glittering rainbow trail in its wake. Quickly dashed behind a tree. Jessie ordered the coachman to stop and ran towards the rainbow, but it dissipated by the time she reached it. Curious, she tiptoed further into the dense forest. What could that creature have been, she wondered. Jessie had never seen anything so beautiful. I want to see it again right now, she said, and she stamped her dainty foot on the forest floor. That's how she always got things she wanted back at the castle. She looked behind every tree, but found nothing, not even a footprint in the mud. She walked a little more and caught sight of a clearing bathed in a wondrous bright light. There, standing in the middle of the clearing, was the white creature. Was it a horse? Jessie compared it to the royal horses pulling her carriage. No, it was no ordinary horse. It had a big white horn on its head that shone in the light like a crystal. The princess had never seen such a creature before, although she knew many animals of the forest quite well. Who are you? Jessie called to the animal into the clearing. I am a unicorn, said the creature, and I am lost. Your golden carriage shone so brightly in the sun that I followed it all the way here. Jessie noticed that the beautiful unicorn was sad. I'm supposed to meet the other unicorns, but I can't find my way back, the unicorn explained. What are you meeting for, and where are you trying to go? Asked the princess Jessie. All unicorns meet regularly at a secret place that you humans don't know about. There, young unicorns like me are taught by a great wizard. He teaches us how to be unicorns and how to get the power to shine and glow so beautifully. I really can't be late. Jessie realized her mouth was open. She was dazzled by the beauty of this creature. She desperately wanted to pet the unicorn, but the unicorn refused her. Princess Jessie became annoyed. This forest belongs to my father, the king of the woodland. You are in our kingdom, you have to obey me, she said forcefully. The unicorn became pale. You are very unkind. I don't like you. Not every creature has to obey you just because your father is a king. Unicorns are very peaceful and friendly beings. With that, the wondrous creature disappeared, leaving behind a glittering trail of mist. Jessie was quite perplexed. It was the first time in all her life that someone had disobeyed her. When she returned to the royal palace, she demanded that her father capture the strange creature for her. Father, I really want to possess this glittering magical creature. It looks so wonderful. The king replied, Dear Jessie, I would love to do that for you. Only for once, I can't grant you your wish. Magical creatures cannot be captured. Their attention must be earned. Jessie went to her room to think this over. Each time she went out into the forest, Jessie visited the clearing, hoping to see the unicorn again. She tried to lure it with treats, but the unicorn wouldn't show up. At night, she dreamed of riding through the forest on the unicorn's white back and being allowed to attend the unicorn's secret gathering. She couldn't stop thinking about how the unicorn said they all treated each other politely and kindly. dream changed. Jessie suddenly saw herself in her dream, yelling at one of the servants and being rude to the dressmakers. When she woke up and could not go back to sleep, she reflected all night and made a firm resolution to be a better princess. The next morning, she got up early and put on the plainest dress she owned. She ran down the many stairs to the dining room and sat down at the huge table that was just set for her. As usual, Jessie realized she wasn't hungry at all and ran into the kitchen. "Good morning, Catherine. You don't have to make me breakfast today. An apple and a glass of milk is quite enough for me this morning." The kitchen employees could hardly believe their ears. Jessie grabbed the apple and milk and hurried out. Then she met the coachman, who was already feeding the horses and getting them ready for her ride in the forest. "Hello, Benjamin. May I help you feed the horses?" she asked. Before Benjamin could answer, one of the horses took a big bite out of Jessie's apple. Jessie laughed. "This is really fun," she exclaimed. The princess took it upon herself to make the dressmakers' lives. Welcome in, Party Sheba. Thank you for the follow. The princess took it upon herself to make the dressmakers' lives a little easier too. They sometimes worked for days on the princess's special requests, almost never received any attention. Jessie had seen a beautiful meadow on her last outing and went to pick a big bouquet full of colorful flowers for them. "I can't wait to see if they like them," Jessie thought. Jessie took her daily carriage ride through the forest as usual. It was only when she no longer expected to see the wondrous magical creature ever again that the unicorn appeared in the clearing. This time it came very close to her. She could feel its stardust on her skin and smell its unique floral scent. She was incredibly excited. The unicorn knelt down in front of Jessie to let her climb up on its back. Jessie was completely speechless, but happier than she had ever been. They rode silently through the forest, as if on a velvet hoofs, wrapped in a cloud of fine silver dust. The unicorn showed the princess a silver lake, the unicorn's secret meeting place. The rainbow behind the lake was reflected in the water. It was beautiful. Jessie felt like she was magical too. She understood that being allowed to ride to the unicorn's secret meeting place was a great sign of trust. She knew that she had to carefully guard and keep this secret. At that moment, a deep friendship began between the two that would change the princess's life forever. At the royal palace, Jessie was unrecognizable. Castle staff was amazed at her transformation. She never lost her temper anymore. She took very loving care of the animals, and she was never rude to an employee again. Of course, the king also noticed the change in his daughter. He smiled because he was proud of her. Now he knew that his beloved girl would become a good queen one day. Almost like magic, he thought to himself and smiled towards the clearing. I kind of like that one. That one was sweet. Let's see here. Let's do another random story because I like that one. Alright, this one is a little bit shorter. It's called Charlotte's Story of the Bees. It was Charlotte's 6th birthday, and as usual, It was blisteringly hot outside. All of the birthday guests had discovered or had gathered in the garden to enjoy a large cake buffet. Charlotte's grandparents, aunts and uncles, neighbors, and mother had baked the most delicious variety of cakes and pies. Charlotte got to be the first to cut a cake, and she chose her favorite, strawberry with a delicious cream cheese icing. "This is my favorite cake," Charlotte said to her best friend. "Then I want to try it too," Lara replied. When everyone had a piece of cake or pie of their choosing, the party felt like it had begun. Everyone was cheering and enjoying the great weather. Suddenly, Charlotte's little brother Liam jumped up. He dropped his fork and started running across the garden. "What's wrong with him?" asked Lara. Liam was now running around in circles, screaming loudly. As Lara turned back to her piece of strawberry cake, she too started screaming. Sitting on her cake were two yellow and black striped insects munching on her strawberries. "Charlotte, get them off," cried Lara. Everyone at the table was getting increasingly agitated as more and more of these yellow and black insects came to eat the sugary treats. They were also attracted to the delicious lemonades and a freshly prepared fruit salad. Charlotte's mother was trying to calm the birthday guests and cover the cakes and treats so that their buzzing guests would fly away. "Mom, make the bees go away. They're ruining my whole party," yelled Charlotte, who was upset by all of the chaos. "Your buzzing guests aren't bees, they're wasps. Bees aren't attracted to candy and cake. They are only interested in pollen and nectar," Charlotte's mother explained. "I don't really care whether they're wasps or bees. They're all equally stupid," Charlotte grumbled. To save the birthday party, everyone was moved to the living room where they could eat and play in peace. Later, when the guests had to say goodbye, Charlotte's mother reproached her. "Charlotte, you wished for the bees to disappear earlier today," her mother started. "You are too young to understand the importance of bees, but in a few years you will realize that bees play a very important role on this planet." "I don't think so," said Charlotte stubbornly. "Bees are annoying. They totally ruined my birthday today." A few years later, Charlotte was celebrating her birthday again on a gorgeous summer day. She was turning 10 years old. Everyone was sitting at a beautifully set table in the garden. "Mom, where is the strawberry cake I love so much?" Charlotte asked. She had gotten her favorite cake every other year so far. "I'm sorry, sweetheart, but there are hardly any strawberries left," she explained. "That's why I couldn't make your favorite cake this year." "But where did all the strawberries go?" asked Charlotte. "Since there are hardly any bees left, the flowers from fruit trees and strawberry plants can no longer be properly pollinated," Charlotte's mom explained. "Therefore, many less large fruits grow and ripen, and the harvest is very small and quickly used up." Charlotte remembered her birthdays when there were enough strawberries and got worried. "But if the bees are so important to us humans, then surely something must be done about it. The bees must be protected," Charlotte said with conviction. "What can we do to help them?" "Let's go to the library and borrow a book about bees and find out how we can provide a place for them to live in our garden. If you care about bees, you could also do a presentation about them in geography class for your classmates. Maybe your teacher will think of something else to do to prevent their extinction too." The next day, Charlotte passionately explained to her classmates how important the little insects are to people and that they had to work together to protect and save the bees. Thank you, Zen, for the thingy. the second. Need to change the layout of Twitch alerts so that they appear over me instead of under me. Thank you for the hydrate party, Shiba. I will do that right now. I was actually thinking about hydrating too because it's very important when doing these kinds of streams to make sure I'm getting the right amount of water. This next one is called the Winter Supply Thief. Autumn arrived quickly. The leaves changed color and fell gently to the ground with the breeze. It's time to go foraging again, the little field hamster thought to himself. Careful not to be seen, he nimbly scurried out of his burrow and across the field. Until recently, tall grass and bushy corn stalks had been there. Anticipating a hailstorm, the farmer had quickly mowed the fields. With little coverage, the field hamster had to move very carefully along the open area. He laboriously collected individual kernels of corn and other leftovers from the harvest. With his supplies stored in his cheeks, he dashed back to his burrow. He placed the kernels in his pantry and headed for the hazelnut tree. He met a squirrel there who was busy picking nuts and dropping them to the ground below where he would collect them to bury. "Hey," the squirrel called down from a branch. "What are you doing there? This is my tree." "What makes this your tree?" asked the field hamster. Before the squirrel could answer, they were both distracted by a loud, rustling sound. "Hello," called a little field mouse, sticking her nose out of the pile of leaves. "I've been watching you. I suppose you're foraging as well?" She looked at the pile of nuts the squirrel had already collected under the tree. The field hamster and squirrel nodded. "Winter is almost upon us, and there isn't much time left to gather supplies," the squirrel explained. "Each day is colder than the last one, and once the ground is frozen, I won't be able to dig. I have to be especially industrious now so that I won't go hungry." This gave the little field mouse an idea. "Why don't we all look for supplies together?" she said. "I can run fast and fit through small places. Plus, I know the best hiding spots in the granaries, and I'm so nimble that I can outrun anyone. If we work together, we can collect a lot more in total and better protect our supplies from thieves," the field hamster agreed. "No one is better at digging caves and tunnels than me. Plus, I can carry lots of grain in my cheeks. I can climb and jump from one branch to another," offered the squirrel. "I'm not afraid of roofs and gutters either. I can get to lots of goodies that very few others can." "And I can fly," exclaimed a little titmouse who had been listening to the conversation. "If there's danger, I can give out a warning and get away quickly. Plus, I can see bugs and worms from high up and find grains or breadcrumbs almost anywhere. May I join you?" "All right," exclaimed the squirrel. "If no one objects, we can have joined forces. Gather supplies together every day from now on, and then take them to a secret storage place. We won't tell anyone where we hide our supplies, and each of us can take turns keeping watch so that no one steals from us. All the animals agreed to the proposal. For the next several weeks, they gathered everything they could find. One foggy day, they decided to visit the hiding place together to see how much they had already accumulated. Winter was not far off, and everyone felt well prepared. "I'm sure we're ready for the winter," the little field mouse exclaimed when everyone gathered at the secret hiding spot. They looked at a small mountain of nuts, berries, and grains. "Wait a minute," said the titmouse. "This pile looked much bigger yesterday." The animals looked at each other suspiciously. "The field hamster was the last one to stand guard," said the squirrel. "He could have snuck out supplies in his big cheeks." The field hamster assured them he hadn't stolen any of their supplies and let them look into his cheeks as proof. "Who else could it have been?" asked the squirrel. Discouraged, they left their hiding place. The titmouse stayed behind to guard the entrance. Next day, they all came together again and brought their freshly collected acorns, beech nuts, and grains. "Where are all of our supplies?" said the field hamster. "The pile is getting smaller and smaller." "Well, it must have been the titmouse," said the squirrel. "She was on guard duty and she can fly. She must have carried everything off without any of us noticing." But the titmouse shook her head and assured the others that she would never do such a thing. "I'm going to get that thief," said the squirrel. "I'll keep watch tonight and be extra attentive." When they all met again the next day, they had very special treats with them: blackberries and rose hips, dried bread, and quite a few seeds. "Oh dear," said the field mouse. "I think the squirrel is the one who has been stealing all our supplies. More are missing. After all, he can climb up high in the trees to hide them." But the squirrel affirmed that he had nothing to do with the disappearance of the supplies. They were at a loss. As they were trying to figure out what to do next, there was a loud rumbling. They all turned towards the sound and could not believe their eyes. The remaining pile of chestnuts and acorns disappeared into the ground in a landslide. The animals looked at each other and ran to where the supplies had disappeared. They looked into the tunnel and came face to face with a mole. "Why are you stealing our supplies?" said the field mouse. "Why don't you go foraging yourself instead of taking our nuts and berries?" said the field hamster. "Hold on, I didn't take your supplies on purpose," the mole said quickly. "I was digging tunnels when all of a sudden treats began to trickle into my burrow. I haven't touched any of it because I didn't know who they belonged to. You can have it back." "Oh, thank you," said the squirrel. They were all relieved. "I'm really glad it wasn't one of us," said the titmouse. "We were too quick to lose trust in each other." "Agreed," said the field mouse. "From now on, we will trust each other." Then they invited the mole to share their supplies too. "Together we'll get through the winter for sure," said the squirrel. These are actually really cute. I'm enjoying these more than I was expecting. Alright, let's see here. This one is a series. It has 5 parts. It's called The Little Panda Lee. Everyone get comfortable because this might take a moment with how many parts it has. Lee was the youngest in his family. He had 2 older brothers, Tien and Han, who thought they were stronger and more beautiful than Lee. They had trouble relating to their little brother. They were always competing in games to see who was stronger, but Lee was not allowed to join them. He also looked a little different than his siblings. His right ear was longer than his left, and it often fell into his face when he was running, making it so that he couldn't see anything out of his right eye. Most pandas have small ears that stand upright on their heads. The others often made fun of Lee. They called him floppy ear or one eye. This made Lee sad. His parents tried to comfort him by telling him that he was special. They always said they loved him as much as his brothers, but as nice as it was to hear, it didn't comfort Lee for long. Somehow he always felt that all the other pandas were watching him. Something is wrong with me, the little panda thought to himself. He didn't want to be different from the others. There was a place where he liked to go when he wanted to be alone, which was the case this morning. Lee walked to the beach where an old wooden boat lay in the sand. It had not been used for a long time. In the boat, he could forget all his worries and let his fantasies run free. Over time, Lee had brought some things to the boat to make it special. An old blanket and a big bamboo pole for exercising. Today, he was looking forward to the delicious bamboo shoots he had brought for lunch. After playing and exercising in the sand, he crawled into the boat and ate the goodies he had brought. He was exhausted and his belly was so full that he fell asleep. This had never happened before. Suddenly, a strong wind began to blow, but the little panda didn't wake up. Big waves carried the boat from the beach and into the open sea, which raged as Lee floated within what now looked like tiny walnut shell. Lee woke up the next morning on a beach, drenched in sea and rainwater. In order to see, he threw his head back, keeping his long ear from blocking his view. Around him lay the bamboo pole and a few remaining broken boards from the boat. Everything looked so strange. Lee shook himself vigorously to check whether he was really awake or just dreaming, and to remove some of the seawater from his fur. There was no doubt about it. He was awake. Oh dear, he cried in despair. How did I end up here? There was no one around to answer as he stood alone at the sandy shore of an unfamiliar island. It was still raining heavily, so Lee sought shelter under a tree. When he was out of the rain, he realized that he was very hungry. At home, there would have been a delicious breakfast waiting for him right about now. Instead, he'd have to go in search of something edible in this strange place. Lee felt queasy. Suddenly, something rustled in the nearby bushes. A creature with a small head and a long neck slowly began to emerge. Is that a snake? Lee thought, frightened. He remembered his parents' warnings about how some snakes are poisonous, But no, this had to be something else, because after the creature's long neck emerged from the bushes, next came a large shell. The creature moved rather slowly on four small feet. Fortunately, it did not look dangerous, and the little panda gathered up all his courage to speak to it. "Who are you?" he asked. "My name is Patricia, and I am the oldest turtle on this island. Who are you, and where are you from? I have never met anyone like you before," said the turtle. Lee told Patricia his whole story. He told her about his home and his family, and that sometimes he felt sad because he looked a little different from the other panda bears. Lee told her that he had accidentally fallen asleep in the boat and hadn't noticed the bad storm that left him stranded on this island. "How am I going to find my way back? I miss my family already," Lee sobbed in despair. The old turtle listened to Lee very carefully, then said, "I wouldn't have even noticed that you have a longer ear if you hadn't told me. I also have a very different pattern on my shell than my fellow turtles do. We all have things that make us each unique. Don't worry, I'll help you figure out a way to get back home." Lee calmed down a bit and nodded eagerly. Suddenly, there was a lot of noise because a family of curious monkeys had surrounded the newcomer. They swung from one tree to another, screeching wildly and asking questions. The little panda didn't know which of these questions he should answer first. The monkeys were so loud that more and more animals gathered around to meet the new visitor. There was a tiger, two mighty elephants, a fox, a kangaroo, and a parrot with beautiful colorful feathers. Even the furry capybaras popped their heads out of the water, but quickly dived back under the surface again when they heard the commotion. All the animals had lived on the island for a very long time and were very curious about Lee. Lee was overwhelmed. He was so exhausted from his journey and all the new impressions that his eyelids felt heavy, and he simply fell over. When he opened his eyes again, he was lying in a softly padded nest of grass. In front of him were ripe bananas, fresh leafy branches, berries, and many other delicious things. He was so hungry that he tasted a little of everything. "Everyone is so kind to me here," he thought. "I could get used to this." Unfortunately, the good feeling didn't last long. Lee got a stomachache from all of the treats. The animals had been very thoughtful, but they didn't know which foods panda bears should and shouldn't eat. When Lee told them that bamboo was Panda's main source of food, Patricia let out a deep sigh. She said, "Unfortunately, there is no bamboo grass growing on this island. I know that for sure, but I will bring you some herbs to help make your stomachache go away." The parrot flew all over the islands to double check, but the turtle was right. No bamboo in sight, he confirmed. Patricia was an old, wise turtle. She knew that one could not stay long in one place without the right food. She went to the elephants and asked them to get some logs from the forest to build a raft so that Lee could go home. The other animals were given instructions on how to help build it. The capybaras, with their sharp and strong teeth, proved to be masters at working with the logs. Monkeys thought it was great that there was finally something happening on the island. Instead of bickering and eavesdropping amongst each other, they could now observe the exciting goings-on. Everyone was busy assembling the raft as quickly as possible. Even the flamingo helped, although he usually did not like to get his feathers dirty. With everyone's help, and the raft was finished that same evening. Tiger checked the joint work, stood on the raft as a test, and said proudly, "You could go around the whole world in this. Well done, friends." Everyone cheered. Then Patricia approached the raft with a very serious look. "I agree," she said. "You've all done a great job, but the most important, difficult skill is still ahead of us. We now have to find out where Lee's home is and find a helper who can swim very well to push the raft in the right direction." Silence spread over the group. Everyone was thinking hard. "I have an idea," said the parrot. "I circle the island every day. I always see a dolphin in the water. Why don't we ask him if he can help us?" "Why didn't I think of that? I must be getting old," Patricia muttered to herself. "The dolphin is an old friend of mine. I'm sure he'll be happy to help us." So the parrot flew off to track down their helper. After a short time, he returned to the shore with the dolphin, and Patricia explained Lee's situation. "Of course I'll help you. Someone just has to show me the way," he said. Alright, that was the end of part 1. And take a sip of water before part 2. One moment. Part 2. This is called Panda Lee Returns. Lee had recovered from his harrowing journey and the time it took the animals to build him a raft to get back home. He had watched them work as he rested, and he was looking forward to being reunited with his family. But it also made him sad to have to say goodbye to his new friends. The monkeys fetched long lines from the forest and tied them around the dolphin's large dorsal fin. They attached the other ends of the vines to the raft that would carry Lee back to his island. All the animals gathered around to wish the little panda bear a safe journey. Patricia was going to accompany him to make sure he got back there safely. They boarded the raft and the dolphin began to swim, pulling Patricia and Lee behind him. The parrot, who had agreed to show them the way, flew overhead and kept a lookout for Lee's home. According to Lee's story, I should be able to recognize the island by the tall bamboo grass growing there, the parrot thought. They had been out at sea for hours and the wind was picking up. The dolphin was swimming with all his might, but it was getting harder and harder for him to pull the raft. He wouldn't make it much further on his own, but the parrot hadn't seen land yet. Patricia and Lee tried to help by paddling along, but they couldn't make much difference. Suddenly, the raft was surrounded by a pod of small whales who were looking at Lee. "Are you the little panda that was swept away in the old wooden boat by the big hurricane? Your parents and brothers have been looking for you for several days. They asked us to try to find you." "Yes, that's me. We are looking for the way home," cried Lee excitedly, "but my friend Dolphin is already exhausted and can hardly pull the raft." "We'll take it from here," the whales said in chorus. Patricia freed the dolphins from the vines and thanked him for his help. He wished everyone good luck for the rest of the journey and swam away. The parrot landed on the raft and said, I I have had to fly against the wind this whole time, and visibility is getting worse. I need a rest too. He wished them luck on the rest of their journey and flew away. The whale pod formed a line behind the raft and began to nudge it with their noses. The whales swam so fast that they all arrived quickly at the beach where Lee and had begun his involuntary adventure. Trisha saw the tall bamboo trunks that surrounded the land and knew that they were in the right place. Word spread very quickly that the missing panda was back. Lee's parents were very happy to have him in their arms, and his brothers couldn't get enough of exciting stories. The little panda enjoyed the attention. Then he said, "I am so hungry for delicious bamboo shoots." There were plenty of those around, and the old turtle could see that Lee was very comfortable. She said goodbye to everyone and then turned to Lee to say, "You're a brave little panda. You're alright just the way you are." Smiling with satisfaction, Patricia returned to her island in the company of the whales and told the other animals about Lee's successful journey. But wait, there's more. Part 3. And a Lee in the message in the bottle. It had been a long time since Lee had returned home after his last adventure. He was still a young panda bear, but he had become more experienced and even more courageous. He had also changed physically, getting much bigger and stronger. Hardly anyone made fun of his longer ear anymore because it was simply a part of his appearance that made him unique. He was growing up to be a confident young panda bear. In the winter on the island, although no one had hardly noticed, there was no snow. Oh, it was winter on the island, although no one hardly noticed. There was no snow, and it was still quite hot outside. However, it rained more often than other times of the year, especially even all day long. Other times it poured as if from buckets, completely soaking Lee in just a few moments. These strong winter storms were also rougher than they were in the summer. There would be a great deal of driftwood on the beach afterwards, and several of the palm trees and bamboo stems would snap as if they were mere matchsticks. Sometimes the aftermath of these storms reminded Lee of his involuntary adventure out into the open ocean in his old boat. He always thought fondly of his friends who had welcomed him so warmly back then and had helped him find his way home. Today, Lee was playing on the beach with his bamboo sticks as he... I have pills to take after I finish this part. Lee was played on the beach with his bamboo sticks as he did every day. It was a rare day without rain. The sun was even peeking through the thick cloud over cover from time to time. When he was tired, he sat down in the sand and looked dreamily at the sea. He found the water and the sound from the waves calming. He squinted his eyes. Had he seen that right? There was something floating towards him near the shore. He quickly rose and dashed to the water's edge. Sure enough, he saw an object moving up and down in the large waves. "What's that?" wondered Lee. Squinting his eyes to see better, it was a green glass bottle. Lee fished it out with one of his bamboo sticks. A glass bottle doesn't belong in the sea, he grumbled. Someone might cut themselves. He took a closer look at the bottle. It was completely undamaged. Then he noticed a note inside. Lee had just fished a message in a bottle out of the sea. He had only ever heard about them in stories, and never thought of finding one himself. I wonder who the messages are for, he wondered. This is very exciting. Maybe I should open it and read it. His thoughts were rushing through his head, but Lee had learned how to stay calm and weigh his options before acting. I could take it home and read it with the others, or I could throw it back into the sea because it might be meant for someone else. Well, but until I read it, I won't even know who the message is for. He kept thinking, maybe there's no message inside at all, just a blank note. Or it could be a treasure map, or someone might be in desperate need of help and I would be the first one to know. Now Lee knew he had to find out. He unscrewed the cap of the bottle and pulled out a slightly soggy, tightly rolled up piece of paper. The ink had run from the wetness, and Lee had a difficult time deciphering what was written on the note. He read it slowly. Dear Lee, hopefully our message reaches you. We haven't heard from you in so long and hope you are well. Send us a message back. Your old pals, Patricia and friends. A tear rolled down Lee's cheek as he read the letter. He was not crying because he was sad, but from the pure joy at hearing from his friends. His mind was made up. He absolutely had to see them again, and he already had an idea for how it could work. He ran home and told his parents and brother about the message in a bottle. They all decided to invite Patricia the turtle and the others to their island for a visit. They could hardly wait to extend the invitation in person. Of course, some preparations had to be made first because the trip might not be easy. His brothers offered to accompany him together. They had enough muscle to steer the boat through the rough ocean. They planned to set off on their journey in just a few days. Looks like it is ad time, so I guess that's a perfect place to take my pills. I will be right back. Alright, it looks like the ads are back or are done now. I apologize if I sound a bit weird because I have a pill under my tongue, but it'll be fine. I think I might finish up the Panda Lee story. Finish up with part 4 and part 5, and I'd call it a day after that. I want to make sure that I am saving my voice because I have to use it all day tomorrow for my day job. Now, this is part 4, Panda Lee in the island. I almost made a JoJo's joke right there. JoJo's reference. Word spread like wildfire that Lee the panda was planning a trip back to the island where a major hurricane had stranded him several years ago. Some were curious about what he wanted to do there. Others worried it would be too dangerous to embark on such a long journey. Lee told them all, "I want to see my old friends again. I need to see how they are doing." Everyone understood and offered to help with the preparations. They loaded up the boat with several bags of Thank you for the follow, sucking Tom Cruise's toes. What a name. Loaded up the boat with several bags of bamboo shoots, from fresh and some dried so they would last longer. They packed enough for 3 strong panda bears. Oh, that's a cute emote. They packed enough for 3 strong panda bears to eat throughout the whole trip because Lee's brothers were going with him. He also packed blankets, water canisters, board games, and more. Everyone contributed something they knew would be helpful. The days leading up to the trip passed as if in the blink of an eye. Lee and his brothers made sure everything they packed was weatherproof. Once they had enough provisions and some gifts for their friends, they were ready to take off. Everyone was curious about the faraway island and its inhabitants and would have loved to join the travelers. Lee promised to send them a message when he arrived and to return with a big surprise. Then he and his brothers boarded the boat and set sail. The sea was very calm and they made slow progress. Although Lee could not remember the way well, he had a feeling that they were going in the right direction. Sometimes the water was so calm that they had to row hard in order to gain any speed. They would have liked a little more wind because the sails didn't help in a lull and it was quite exhausting to row so much. When night fell, the 3 brothers agreed that they would take turns keeping watch while the others slept. This way they could keep their strength up for the rest of the journey. It was Lee's turn to keep watch on the first night. The wooded shores were very eerie in the dark, and the usually crystal clear water as jet black. The noises at night were very different too. Sounds that only hardly noticed during the day were loud and strange. Lee heard unfamiliar calls coming from the direction of the forest and a sudden splash under the boat. Then he heard something flutter past his ear. Young Panda felt a little queasy, but he didn't want to admit it to his brothers. So he shook himself vigorously, looked at the moon, which showed him the way, and started humming something to himself. But as much as Lee tried to distract himself, he couldn't shake the feeling that someone was tampering with his boat. He heard a knock, then felt a jerk, but no matter how hard he tried, Lee couldn't see anything. He listened very carefully and heard a soft clicking sound coming from the edge of the boat. When he heard a knocking on the boat from the same spot, he fought the urge to wake up his brothers and decided to look for himself. Very carefully he crawled to the end of the boat. When he bent down to the water, he found a long, wet, strong nose. Lee was startled and leapt back from the edge. What was that? He thought. The noises continued, so he prepared himself to look again. Now they were coming from all sides of the boat. Somehow the noises seemed familiar. Suddenly he remembered the dolphins that accompanied his raft on his return trip. They made the same sounds. He quickly ran over to the edge again, and sure enough, several dark silhouettes were swirling around the boat. "Hi," Lee greeted the dolphins. "You all gave me quite a scare." The dolphins swam around the boat, rocking it in the water as a greeting. This woke up Lee's brothers. "What's all the noise, Lee?" his older brother asked, still quite sleepy. "All this rocking is making me sick," said the other. "Look, it's the dolphins from the island," Lee said. "If we follow them, we're sure to find our way faster. Maybe they'll even give us a boost. Hold on tight, guys. I think we're about to go at a different pace." The dolphins circled the boat and pushing it at breakneck speed through the black waters. As the sun rose, the dolphins let go of the boat. As a farewell, they made a few more jumps and swam away. Pandas had prepared a long journey, but with the unexpected help from the dolphins, they had reached their destination much faster than planned. The brothers took a look at their surroundings. The landscape was completely different from the one they knew from home. Their destination was right in front of them, and they were heading straight for it. "We're here," exclaimed Lee. They reached the shore of the island and found a place to dock the boat. Lee noticed that something was different from his first visit. The wide, sandy beach where the islanders had built the raft for Lee's return was no longer there. The water around the island was much higher than usual. It almost looked as though the large body of water would swallow the island whole. As the brothers got out of the boat, they stood in knee-high water. The bottoms of the tree trunks and the plants around them were all underwater. Lee wondered where all the islanders were. Climbed a hill to get to a better look and heard a rustling in the bushes. A small head with a long neck appeared. This time Lee was not frightened at all. He ran up to the old turtle and hugged her tightly. "I never thought I'd live to see this day," said Patricia, the oldest inhabitant of the island. "It's so nice to see you again, my dear, brave Lee. What a great surprise. And I see you even brought reinforcements. I'm so happy to see you. Welcome back." Quick pause as we move on to the final part. And a Lee and a life-saving idea. And I take a small sip of water. Part 5, the final part. Patricia the Turtle, the oldest inhabitants of the island where Lee had been stranded some years ago, now welcomed her unexpected guests warmly. Lee's brothers who had come with him to visit were fascinated by the island. They had never left home before and were amazed by the variety of unfamiliar plants. They looked longingly at the ripe fruit on the trees that smelled so enticing, of course. Patricia noticed. "Ah, yes, I wish I could offer you some of the delicious fruit to try," she said. "Unfortunately, they made Lee sick when he was here last time. It took an elaborate magic potion to help him get back on his feet. I'm sure you remember that, Lee." He looked over at him and winked. "And I remember it well," he said. "That's why we brought a lot of bamboo this time. You can't have any more visitors with stomach aches," he said with a laugh. The two brothers nodded that they understood and continued to look around. Couldn't get enough of the colorful flowers and plants. Suddenly, a bird appeared above their heads, cawing loudly. He said, "Is that really you, Lee? You're back. I have to let everyone know." It turned out not to be necessary because the parrot was so loud that the monkeys had already come over to see what the commotion was about. They circled the visitors curiously and patted Lee's broad shoulders, amazed at how much he had grown. The monkeys were loud enough that more and more animals joined them from within the depths of the island. A tiger slowly emerged from behind the bush and greeted Lee and his brothers coolly. Fox came up slowly, sniffed at the panda bears, and said, "It's so good to see old friends, and you even brought reinforcements." Suddenly, they all heard a loud trumpeting sound, and the ground started to shake beneath them. These brothers began to feel a bit queasy. Then, out of the thickest part of the forest, 3 huge elephants emerged, waving their trunks in a friendly manner at the visitors. This parade of island dwellers went on for some time until Patricia and the pandas were surrounded by a huge group of animals. Lee was beaming. He was so happy that everyone recognized him and was glad to see him. He passed around some small gifts he had brought from his island and shared the greetings sent from his family and friends back home. He told the story of finding their message in a bottle and how it had inspired him to visit and see everyone again. Then he introduced his big brothers, explaining how they had wanted to see the island for themselves and hadn't wanted Lee to make the dangerous journey alone. Then everyone started talking at once, asking questions about what had happened since they had last saw each other. Patricia took the floor to restore order. "Lee, did you notice anything different when you landed on our island?" "Oh yes," Lee replied. "We couldn't find a spot to dock our boat without having to wade through several feet of water." The islanders nodded sadly. "In my memory," Lee continued, "the island was surrounded by a wide, sandy beach, and when we first docked, it was so quiet, I wondered if anyone even lived here anymore at all. What happened?" "Your memory is not wrong," explained Patricia. "Our island was indeed surrounded by a wide beach for the past 2 years. We have been hit by many violent hurricanes, and the high tide that rose as a result just won't go down. It has already swallowed our beach, and we fear that it will not get any better." "We want to help. What can we do?" asked Lee. "We really appreciate that," said Patricia. Many of us are so busy moving our homes to higher regions of the island that we rarely see each other. That's why everything seems so quiet. Plus, the older of us can't or won't leave our homes. I, myself, can't move, Patricia continued, because, as you know, I'm not exactly the fastest creature, and going up and down the hill would take far too long. What we really need is an idea for how to stop the water from rising further. Patricia shook her head and said, "But let's forget about our worries for now. A distraction will be good for us all. What do we say we celebrate your arrival with a little party?" "Oh yes," trumpeted the elephants. The monkeys drummed against the tree trunks, the lion roared, the parrot squawked, and the giraffes stamped their hooves. It was a resounding show of enthusiasm, and the three brothers joined in happily. They set a large table, and everyone contributed something to eat. The pandas offered some of their fresh bamboo shoots. Everyone laughed and told stories as they ate. Then many of the animals wanted to show off their new homes. When the group reached the top of the highest mountain, where only a few goats lived, Lee thought about the rocks that were coming loose beneath his feet as he walked. "That's it," he shouted. "How many mountains do you have on this island?" "Just one, just this one," a monkey answered. That won't be enough," said Lee. "What won't be enough?" Patricia asked. "I have an idea, and it just might work," said Lee. "If we all help out and find enough big rocks, we could build a dike around your island, so not all of you would have to move. The dike would help keep the water level down." "That's right," said Lee's brother. "Let's get started right away." "Hold on, we thought of that too," said an elephant. "It's a very good idea. The problem is that we don't have enough big rocks on the island." That night, the three pandas couldn't sleep. They were trying to think of how they could help. Just as the sun was coming up, they found a solution. The next day, they shared their plan with Patricia and the other inhabitants of the island. Everyone was ready to get started. It wouldn't be easy, but they could manage it if they worked together. On Lee's home island, there were countless rocks, as far as the eye could see, and in all sizes. The big challenge was to transport them from one island to the other, but there was a solution for that too. Between the two islands, there was plenty of wood for building rafts, which they could use to transport the stones. The plan was to set up a ferry service, and they could get started building the dike. They sat down together and distributed tasks to the helpers. Patricia and Lee wrote a letter to Lee's home island, and the parrot offered to deliver it. When the parrot returned with a positive reply, everyone knew that their plan would work. I knew it, Lee rejoiced. The pandas set off on their raft to collect the first batch of rocks. After several weeks of back and forth transport, so many stones had arrived and been laid that the dike around the island had reached an impressive height. The capybaras and dolphins worked below the water's surface to provide a proper foundation. As everyone gathered to unload the final raft and ceremoniously place the last stone onto the dike, they heard many voices in the distance. As the raft got nearer, the islanders saw a boat following it that was filled with many panda bears. "I think we're going to have more visitors," said Patricia. Lee and his brothers jumped for joy. And that was the story of Panda Lee. have very much enjoyed doing this ASMR reading for y'all. Like I said earlier, I think I am gonna have to end it here. Thank you for the hydrate, Party Chiba. More water. Thank you. Well, welcome in, Victoria. Thank you. I really enjoyed doing this. It was very relaxing, and I'm glad that all of y'all enjoyed it because it felt a little bit to me like Stardew Valley. It's very peaceful, maybe a little childish. Well, Stardew isn't childish, but the bedtime stories is a little childish, but is still fun and much better written than I was expecting them to be. I think I'm definitely going to be doing this more often. Comfy, yes, very comfy. I, as the reader, feel more relaxed. Feel like a lot of the stress of work has kind of melted away a little bit, which is very nice. Hi, Zay. Comfy. That's good. That's cute. You're comfy. I don't think that I'm actually going to be doing a raid tonight. I think I'm just gonna end it here. But again, thank you for the followers. Thank you, Party Sheba, and sucking Tom Cruise's toes underscore. Underscore is very important, I'm sure. I think I'm gonna do this more often, especially once I start after the semester ends and I'm able to stream more often after work. I think I want to do this at least weekly, but that'll be in probably 3 or so weeks. Thanks everyone for stopping by. I hope to see all of y'all next time. Bye bye.